Blessings, everyone. I am super excited about our guest today. I have Mark Sephton here, and we just went through this whole thing about me saying his name wrong. So hopefully I didn't do it wrong again. But anyways, I am actually going to let him introduce himself and just tell us a little bit about who he is, what his genius is, and then we're going to dive into a conversation about kind of taking entrepreneurship into more of that quantum level. And so stay tuned for that. But until then, welcome, Mark. I'm so happy to have you here. And let's just let you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sounds good. Well, you did great on my name. You crushed that. So go you, Jules. Yeah, in terms of like myself, you talk about like what's your genius? It's always interesting. I mean, the thing that I've come to know, I've been on this planet for 41 years, and the thing I've come to know is your relationship with self is so important. So I really believe that a lot of what I do is actually about helping people to really turn up for themselves and also really relate to themselves. So that's kind of like splintered off into a number of things that I do. I love development, both personal and professional. I think being better than yesterday and being a progressionist is something that I really like echo and I'm aligned to. So in terms of like working with self, that's why typically I've been working with mainly entrepreneurs, creatives, innovators on their own self leadership. So a lot of my work is on your ability to relate to self, because if we really think about it, and for me, it's really true, the greatest relationship we have on this planet is actually with ourselves, because we never escape ourselves. We're with ourselves 24/7, which is incredible when you think of the fact you can't just like have a day off from yourself. You can't like just go put yourself in the closet. You can't just like say, I'll deal with you later. And sometimes there has been times if I've had a real bad day, I'll actually put myself to bed because I know I'll get some solace, right? Because we know we can get in our own way.
Mhm.
But the beauty of having a relationship with yourself, which is full of self-love, self-appreciation, everything derives from that place, because none of us can give of ourselves without having the resource, the energy, the self-awareness, the emotional intelligence to be able to be of service to anybody. So it's interesting how the word selfish when I was a kid was always like so frowned upon, and how actually now we're kind of changing our understanding of this word selfish, because in order for us to actually be generous, we have to start by being selfish. We have to know our limits. We have to know our resource. We are reliant, on the fact that, we've been created that we have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to drink in order for us to function, which I think, again, goes back to it's so important that we focus on self. So, been working in self leadership for a good 10 years. And I guess an expression of that outside of me actually mentoring and teaching people about self leadership and their relationship with self has enabled me to express that through writing. So, I've been writing for Entrepreneur magazine for about 10 years. I obviously host the Brains magazine podcast, which is how I came across yourself, Jules. And really love being on stages where I'm able again to express through stories, through my own failings, through my own struggles, a little bit about how we can connect our head and our heart, and actually how we actually really get the most out of life by being fulfilled, by being in tune with self. And for me, I guess that's really the essence of who I am. And I guess my genius really is down to the point that I thoroughly enjoy helping people improve their relationship with themselves.
I love that. And I completely agree. If it doesn't start with the relationship with self and that every choice comes from knowing yourself, and of course that's always going to evolve, then what's the point? That's where all the static and doubt and everything comes from. So with that, I want to kind of move into a space where, because I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening, and it's interesting how a lot of people that are kind of on this biohacking on more of a conscious spiritual level as well, a lot of them are entrepreneurs. And so knowing their self and knowing their self in whatever part of growing their business they're in is important. So I would love to have just a little gift for them of like, what advice, maybe, if a lack of a better word to put there, or even just telling your own journey of self, are some of the things that you do to create the success that you've created for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think as entrepreneurs, we are hungry. I mean, it's a French word meaning bearer of risk, so we typically like to take risks, and we're curious and we like to develop, and obviously we like to, as we said, bear risks. So there is this curiosity anyway, I think, which is of no surprise that the spiritual realm and the things related to the spiritual side is of a real fascination to people that are in the business of solving problems, of taking risks, and of developing. Really, for me, business is really about solving a problem, and so as entrepreneurs, we want to be resourceful. We want to find better ways to communicate. We want to find better ways, to live. And so I think that a lot of the reason why entrepreneurs are typically hungry and fascinated by more of the spiritual side is I can't remember who conducted the study. I think it might have been Harvard. A lot of the great studies come out of Harvard, don't they? And they noticed, I think it was something like 89% of entrepreneurs had a problematic childhood, and so for me, it's like when we've gone through trauma and difficulty, and trauma really is whenever any of us have experienced loss, which is pretty much everybody on the planet, because that's the world we live in. I think there is that sense of we are hungry to kind of want to find out, and find different aspects of ourselves and different modalities in terms of what is out there for us to be able to position ourselves and move forward, and maybe deal with some of this loss, because it's really clear that a lot of the world, a lot of its pain is from absence of things that they once had. And so as a people, we are looking for answers. We are looking for soothing and relief and understanding. And then in terms of, you asked about like my own kind of like understanding, especially on like the spiritual side of things. And it's interesting really, because I've always believed that the spiritual world is as real as the physical world, and I identify myself as, being spiritual in the sense of, I'm very conscious of and mindful, and so for me, I think when it comes to whether it's spiritual, mental, emotional, or a combination, because I don't necessarily feel like they're always separate. I think there is very much a connection. We know that in psychology, the whole body mind kind of like steer, and how our thoughts can create a feeling, and then we can have a physiological response. And for me, in terms of like understanding more of the spiritual side as an entrepreneur and somebody that's worked in like the field of entrepreneurship for so long, I think the power of like routines is really important. And it's interesting because some people don't like routines. Some people love to be impulsive and to be spontaneous. And I like those things as well. But I also find that for me, I find spontaneity in the midst of organization and routine. So, for example, I may have a daily routine of walking every day for an hour and 20 minutes, but my spontaneity can be in the sense of I haven't decided where I'm going to walk. I can just allow my wanderings and just my curiosity to guide me. I don't need to have it all panned out and planned out and organized. So for me, I think like a lot of spiritual stuff is that it is for me a routine. So I do take time to be in gratitude and to really reflect on the things that I'm grateful for, and I do give thanks to God. And obviously, people's view of God and source is different to everybody. But what's really important is what it means to you. And so for me, it's very much a relational exchange of gratitude and being mindful. And then I really believe that we've all got skills. We've all been given skills and gifts, and in order for us to sharpen those, we have to utilize them and honor them, and actually, start expressing them so that they can be of benefit to other people. We're not just on this earth for our own self gratification. We're on this earth to actually be of contribution, and to flow in as well, as much as flowing out in terms of our energy exchange. So I think a lot of it is around routine. So whether it's gratitude, or whether it's meditation, or prayer, whatever it is for you, I think for me it's something that it is a daily responsibility, and I don't do it because I have to. I do it because actually it's the fruit it produces. I always tell people that whatever you're doing, the most important thing to be mindful of is the fruit that it produces. It doesn't matter whether it's a friendship, a relationship, something you're working on, a habit. If it isn't producing fruit, then it's clearly not good for you, because anything that is good for you will produce fruit, and there'll be a sense of you feeling healthy and feeling more clarity and feeling more peace and having some of those more positive emotions. I think that when you are invested in the right things, that really like shows up. And the human body is a great way of using that as a metaphor, and the fact that we feed it certain foods and we may get acne and we may get spots because actually we're not feeding it the right thing. Spiritually, if you're restless, if you're fearful, then for me it's a clue as to what are you watching, what are you listening to, because the only way into the brain is through the senses. So we have to be mindful of that.
So what I heard in that is the awareness of going back to knowing yourself, right? So it's the awareness of what is resonating with that sense of self and what's not. So this question, I keep hearing it. I love tuning into the audience and hearing their questions, right? So this question came through when you were talking, going back to just whether it's entrepreneurship or just living a daily life. So when you come to a place of a crossroads, or just a simple, I'm making a decision between this and this, or this and this, it doesn't matter, making a choice. What practice do you use before making a choice?
Okay, so there's a couple of things that I would do. I'm just going to write these down so I don't forget. Okay, so the first thing I do anyway before I make a decision is I have 3 filters, and I always ask and always put everything through these 3 filters. So the first one is, am I good at this? So I always ask myself, am I good at this? And the second thing is does this excite me? And then the third thing is, will this take me to where it is that I want to go? So for me, I have a written mission statement on my desk in my bedroom that's framed. So I know every day when I wake up, this is the reason I'm waking up. So I have those 3 filters so that I'm really protecting myself from the things that will distract me, and really prioritizing the opportunities and decisions. So in order for me to make a decision based on A, B, or A, B, or C, I always ask these 3. Am I good at this? Does this excite me? Will this take me to where it is that I want to go? And is it in alignment with my mission statement? Then outside of that, what I also do, which I always find really helpful, is that I actually say out loud, in the sense of, let's just say I'm going to buy a shirt and there's a red, blue, and a green shirt. And I will say out loud, I'm going to buy the red shirt. And then I feel that, and I kind of wait, and I kind of say out loud, I'm making a decision, a commitment, and feel how that feels. And then I'll say, I'm going to buy the blue shirt. And then I feel that. And then I'll say, I'm going to buy the green shirt. And again, I'll feel that. And I do. Normally I will actually say out loud the commitment of each.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually, if I need a little bit of fine tuning, or if you're not getting anything that really you see a difference, the thing that then really helps is when you actually dismiss all three. So when you say, I'm not going to buy the blue shirt, I'm not going to buy the green shirt, I'm not going to buy the red shirt, and then you tend to get a little bit of, no, that's not right. Like, and then you know. So that's what I do.
I love it. I have to tell you, this is what I used to do with my kids when they couldn't make a choice between one or the other. I was like, okay, well, yes is heads and tails is no. Flip a coin. And if you're upset with what the answer is, then sit with that for a little while and see if that's the answer. So it's very similar to what you were just doing and just doing with a coin. So I think it's interesting that because I think that your body does know, right? And when you're like, oh, yeah, it's like, oh, well, there's a reason I just had that. Or if you, that excitement, like you said, I love that. I hope everybody really was listening to that, because once you actually put it into action, you're going to see how valuable that tool that Mark just shared was. So I hope everybody goes and does this in their next decision. Okay, where we want to go? Well, let's just give you the opportunity. Is there something that where you would like to go from here, that you just came in and felt, you know what? There's something that I want to share with everybody, and I'm going to just open it up to that right now and see what next comes through.
Yeah, I think something that comes to mind based on, whenever I'm creating content, I'm always creating it from something that's very much in the now, something that I've experienced like in the last 24 hours, something that I've paid attention to, something that I'm mindful of. So I guess the thing that has kind of like come to me as you said that was actually forgiveness.
Mm.
And the interesting thing, and I know that it's kind of, we're shifting a little bit from where I've come from, but again, it kind of does tie back in, and I'll explain why it ties back in. And some people will know this and some people won't, and some people may see it differently, which is okay. My dad always told me, eat the meat and spit out the bones, which I've always found quite helpful, because you can always take something from any idea, suggestion, you weigh everything. But forgiveness is interesting, because forgiveness is always for the benefit of self.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't saying that what somebody did to you was right or excusable. It's actually for the benefit of you, because when we hold on to unforgiveness, it's when, we hold on to offense, bitterness, and pain. It actually can, make us sick. It can block us from being able to connect with other people. And I noticed somebody said the other day, on a Facebook post, they said, I'm beginning to think that forgiving someone over and over again looks a lot like stupidity.
Mm.
And I said to them, I said, I don't see it that way, because for me, forgiveness is the highest form of self-love, because it isn't, like I said, it isn't saying that the person who hurt you is justified in hurting you. I said, but it's not forgiveness that's the issue. It's that you keep forgetting, because there's a difference between, somebody hurting you, abusing you, and you forgiving them, to you allowing them to do it over and over again. That's something totally different. When you forgive, it isn't even saying, I'm giving you another chance. It's literally saying I'm releasing this for the good of self. And again, from the get-go here today, I talked about the importance of your relationship with self. We're talking about, all these things that can help us to bear fruit. How do we lead ourselves better? And for me, forgiveness is one of the keys to actually making sure that in our spiritual sense that we do have an open channel of love that is able to flow, that isn't rooted in bitterness, because the sad reality is that there's always going to be somebody who does us wrong. And we're not perfect ourselves, so there will be times where we also will need forgiveness too. And so, for me, there is a massive difference between forgiving and forgetting. It's foolish to kind of, expect someone who says sorry to never do the same thing again, and then you trust them and then they do it again. Like, what is it that they say? They say that words can lie, and so can actions, but patterns never do. And for me, it's patterns that I tend to look for, which I think again is another important part of this self leadership and awareness.
I love that you just ended with that. And I think within those patterns as well, that maybe there's some forgiveness that we have to do for ourselves for repeating the pattern until it's learned. There was something that in that forgiveness, I started doing this. Gosh, I mean, it's probably been 10 years ago, but I found it just kind of takes forgiveness almost to the next level, because I find a lot of people that have had really traumatic things happen. And when they forgive, there's another level of forgiveness that I started tapping into. And it was, well, because it's like, well, I'll forgive you so that I can move on. Right. So it is for myself. But then I would always have this little chatter, the subconscious feeling that there was a little bit of interference with that. So then I started saying, okay, I forgive from my divine self, because in the divine frequency, or that God frequency or source frequency, all is already forgiven. And so it brought me to a place where I could actually forgive outside of the programming or of the ego that had any kind of friction around what happened. And it took forgiveness into this whole nother level. And then we get to even see them in a new space, because we get to see what this interaction is when we take out our own experience of what that was, and a whole new level of healing happens. And so I just wanted to say that because it was such a powerful thing for me. So thank you for bringing this up. This is, I mean, we did just like kind of go into this other direction, but look how powerful this is. I love that you brought this up.
Yeah, and thank you for creating the space. And I think that that's also, a part of, life, is actually honoring the different parts of you to be able to have a voice, and to be brave to hear what is being said, and to pause and to be quiet, and actually, to speak out of your own truth, because if you hadn't have created a space there, and actually, if I'm honest, right up until the point you stopped, nothing came until that very moment, and then it just really just opened up, and so that is something that is brave in one sense for you, and for me in this sense. And because when you are speaking out of your own awareness and intuition, sometimes if you're not used to that, then it can be quite daunting.
For me, I feel like those are the best conversations, is to just let so this, I would say, is what people needed to hear between this interaction, because it did come in from that space of just, this is what is here. So whoever is listening, I hope that you're feeling this in your heart. I mean, there were so many amazing tidbits that you have offered, and I think if we go back and listen to this, we're going to see how they all link together. But this last part is, okay, so where in my life do I need to start here by forgiving either myself or another person, so that I can implement all the other little tidbits and gifts that you gave from this conversation? That just kills too.
Yeah, because you have to make room
Mhm.
to really hear and tune in, and you can't do that if you've got things that are all chaotic. And again, like, for me, when people say, what's the most important thing? Well, for me, it is self-awareness, because if you don't know what the challenge is, the opportunity is, the problem is, the breakthrough is, the skill, the gift is, if you have no idea, then you don't know where to focus, you don't know where to move. So for me, yeah, self-awareness is such a beautiful thing to grasp hold of. And the more self-aware you are, the more that you realize that we do have to get out of our own way, that we do have to create space to be able to hear and listen and to feel. Because I mean, emotional intelligence is really knowing what you feel and why you feel it, and then having the courage to be able to communicate it. For me, I love those things: self-awareness, emotional intelligence. That's like just my playground. Love that stuff.
I love that. And I also feel like that is just where we start to go as we evolve as humans too. There's different levels of mastery in that self-awareness, and that's giving me chills too, is just being aware, where in this mastery am I, and where do I need to put more attention? Because having mastery, like you said, over even just emotion, that's a huge thing. It's always something I think that they should start teaching in school,
Mm.
because it's that, and just self-awareness. And I know someday we'll get there. I don't know what kind of school your kids go to, but my kids, that was something that definitely was learned at home. And so I'm kind of going off the subject just a little bit, but just bringing that back to self-awareness, forgiveness, how to make a good choice. I mean, those things right there, just those three things would change somebody's life.
Mm. Well, I always encourage people that if you change self, you change the world, which sounds dramatic, and yet, if people make a planet, then if you change one of those people, you do in effect change the planet too. So for me, it's always about self at the start, in terms of understanding your gifts, what you're here to do, what you're to give and to express. Who, like, there's people in your neighborhood that I cannot affect, Jules, and there's people in my neighborhood you can't affect. So therefore, we all each have a responsibility to where we are and what we do to be of comfort and of kindness, of leadership, of education, of laughter. It doesn't always have to be a, a monetary exchange of skills. It's just the essence of doing life together, but the sense of, when you know that if you change yourself, you can, just the byproduct of that, change your neighborhood. Then that's when it gets exciting, because that's when, if you can't make the change for the good of you, you make the change for the good of others. And if you've got children, I think that's a nice, you can kind of really relate to that, because I always think, at the end of the day, me and you, Jules, weren't here by our own choice. Our parents chose, for us to be here, and we've both got children, and we've made choices that's resulted in them being here. So we have a responsibility to them, to pour into them, educate them, inspire them, develop them, because yeah, they didn't choose. And so we have to take responsibility and find enjoyment in the fact that you need to turn up, not just for the good of you, but also for the good of those that you're responsible for, you're called to, you're a part of. So we all do need to just be mindful of that.
I love that. And I love that you brought it back to the self, because I think there's a lot of people kind of get a little taste of what it's like to help somebody. And then all of a sudden they want to save the world. And they're always looking out here of, what do I need to fix? What do we need to fix? Like, let's just turn that inside out, start here, and then you will be guided through already being whole and already being fixed, or at least in the awareness of what needs to be fixed. And you're not bringing those wounded parts of you to try to fix something that's also wounded. I mean, that right there is the new paradigm, whatever. It's kind of let's get out of the wounded healer and into mastery, because that's where we're going to change the world. So yes, yes, and yes to that. That lights me up. Thank you for bringing that forward.
Yeah, we've heard for a long time that hurt people, haven't we? We hear that a lot. But it's really, when we talk about mastery, it's healed people heal people. That on a total different like energy is so much more impactful. Knowing that heal self, help self, and then it's out of that we can then be, because we're relational beings. If we think of relationships, we're constantly like pointing fault at our partner or our children or our parents. But if we keep taking responsibility for self, and we actually start meeting some of the unfulfilled needs that we are expecting other people to meet, and we actually start meeting them ourselves. I remember when I went through periods of where I wasn't in a relationship, and I really missed and I really longed for belonging. I really enjoy being a part of something. And that's not bad or wrong. We're not built to be an island. We're built to be in families, but I realized that before I belonged to anybody else, I belonged to me. And actually, as soon as I made that conscious decision, rather than me feeling like I need to kind of like, it's like the dating world was like, it's like a job. It was like being unemployed basically and looking for a job, and your mental health, like on dating apps, takes such a whack, because it's like, it's like, why do I have to prove that I'm worth, swiping right or having a conversation or meeting for a coffee? It's like, what is that? Like, that just kills your mental health. And it's like, as soon as you realize that actually I belong to me first, and you start meeting yourself, oh wow, that's a game changer.
I full body chills. I feel, go to a place of wholeness. Then when you bring in another person, you're calling in somebody of wholeness.
Mm,
And in that space, you get to reflect wholeness, which
mm,
only uplifts instead of reflecting wounds, which I feel like is where, there's nothing wrong with having a relationship in there. And there's always going to be stuff that comes up. But if it's always approached from a place of wholeness, and then whatever's shown is for you both to move up, that's
mm,
a new level of self-awareness through that reflection. That right there is the only relationship I would call into my life. Amazing, Mark. That
mm.
I mean, look how many awesome places we was just. So even if you want to put that wholeness in business relationships as well, you will always have the most successful team behind you as well. So you can put anything there on the other side. Okay. Do you have something you want to reflect back on that?
No, other than the fact that, like, we live in a world that is longing for understanding, longing to be heard, longing to feel a part of something. And again, until we bridge that gap between our younger selves and our current selves, we're always going to be hemorrhaging. We're always going to be putting expectation on other people. And the reason why we get disappointed so much is because we have expectations. But actually, one thing that I noticed is when you shift from expectations to requirements, you actually neutralize the disappointment, because you're no longer expecting, but requiring somebody to be a certain way or to express in a certain way is totally different to expecting. And that's been quite transformative as well for me, I would say.
I almost feel like you should say that one more time.
Yeah, so really, we have a lot of disappointment that we all face. And disappointment always comes from unmet expectation. When we expect something to be a certain way, we expect somebody to love us a certain way, and we just become disappointed. But when I made the shift from expectation to requirements, and actually realize that I require you to do this, it lands totally differently, and actually does prevent a whole load of disappointment. And you can do that with business and relationships. It's not just, I mean, disappointment faces us in different forms and in different ways, but it's having that expectation. But again, if you have the requirements, like, I require you to love me a certain way, and respect my boundaries in a certain way. It's different to saying, I expect you to text me every night, or whatever it is, and so it's a different way of expressing, but also protects you from a lot of disappointment.
I love that. And I want to take it even a step further of that place of requiring. Really, it's honoring your truth and asking for that truth to be honored by another person.
Correct.
And when we do that, everybody wins. And I think that because we've been brought up in other ways to think that, well, whether it's being selfish or whatever the programming is behind that, is that we feel like if we're asking for what's for our best and highest good, that somebody else is missing out. But the opposite is actually true, is that when we come through as our best and highest selves, and we invite another person to be in honor of that, we're actually honoring that in them at the same time. And that is just another level of taking relationships to a place of purity, clarity, communication, all the other things that come with that. So that's why I wanted you to say it again, because it was so valuable. And thank you for kind of going into it a little bit deeper so that people could see it more clearly.
Yeah, you are.
Wow. All right, Mark. Well, we're running out of time. So let's let everybody know how they can find you, play with you, get a hold of you. How would you have them get a hold of you?
Yeah, so my website is marksephton.com, which is my surname is Sephton. And on there, it's got all my social media links. But typically on, I think, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, it's all Sephton Marks. It's all my surname first, and then my first name. But yeah, marksephton.com is probably the easiest way, because it's got everything on there. My articles, YouTube channel, some segments to a TV show I used to have, links to the Brains podcast, all that good stuff.
Beautiful. And we'll have that link below as well. Well, Mark, this has been so amazing. And I really, really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you for showing up in your brilliance, in your self-awareness, and sharing that with everyone.
Yeah, I loved it. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.